So I've done a lot of distro hopping in the past, and I've done a lot of window manager hopping. I've even done terminal emulator hopping. But it seems in the last few months, I've also gotten into text editor hopping. You guys know I went to Vim, and then to Emacs, then to Doom Emacs, back to Vim. And now you guys have been asking me for a few months. I've been getting this request. Hey, can you check out this modal text editor called Kakoune? And I've kind of put it off for a little while. I installed it actually for the first time about 2 months ago. And I thought, you know what, I might give it a try and show you guys. But to be honest, it was a little difficult getting into this text editor. I think that's probably why I get so many requests from viewers to actually take a look at Kakoune, as many of you guys are interested in maybe learning this text editor, but you're having difficulties getting into it. And not too many people use Kakoune. Because not too many people use Kakoune, you're not really going to find good information on it. You're not going to find a lot of articles written about it. No real good tutorials are written about it. You know, like dealing step by step everything that's possible in Kakoune. And of course, these days, so many people are visual learners. If you're one of those kinds of people, usually the first thing you do is you go to YouTube and you search for Kakoune, and you're hoping that somebody has done some in-depth tutorials on this text editor. There's none. So I'm going to be the guinea pig. I'm going to be, I guess, the guy that kind of dives into Kakoune a little bit. So I'm going to switch over to the web browser here, and the official documentation for Kakoune is kakoune.org. That's their official website. For documentation, you can click on the documentation link here in kakoune.org, and it will take you to this GitHub page where it basically gives you a list of commands and what they do. But honestly, it's tough to wrap your head around the documentation in this kind of format. I really wanted like a Vim tutor style document, you know, something that told me the commands in a document that I could edit. You know, there is something similar. It's not really official, but they do have this on their GitHub. It's called Trampoline. I don't know why the document is called Trampoline, but it's basically a Kakoune tutor. It's not a terribly long document. I mean, this is shorter than the Vim tutor. That's my only issue with it is not as comprehensive as what you really need. So I kind of have to put pieces together to learn this thing. I have to go to the official documentation, and then I get a little more information here in the Trampoline document, and then I find bits and pieces on Reddit or wherever. You know, it's tough to get all of this in one place, but I think this Trampoline document is going to be the best one to start with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this document. And let me switch over to the desktop. I've got a terminal here, and to launch something in Kakoune, you don't have to type the full word Kakoune because that would be annoying. Just type kak. And I've got this document here, kak.txt, and that is where I copied the Trampoline document so that we can play around with it. Now, before getting started, I do want to mention one thing. As far as my Kakoune config, you guys see that I do have line numbers set on the far left. That is not how it comes by default. How you get that is if I type colon to get into the command mode here, and I type add highlighter, and you actually see one of the neat things with the Kakoune editor is we get a Clippy, right? You guys remember Clippy in Microsoft Office that would give you hints on, you know, things to do. You have Clippy built in to Kakoune. And it's also letting me know what are some of the options as far as add highlighter. Then the next thing I need to type could be buffer, global, shared, or window. I'm going to set it to global. And then the next thing I want to set is, see right here, number lines. I think that's the one I want to do. And I'd already had it set, but that's kind of how command mode works in Kakoune, and that's probably one of the first things you're probably going to want to do is add line numbers. I know I kind of like having visually the line numbers on the screen, because I don't like having to always go to the bottom into the status bar to figure out what line I'm on. Let me move my head so you can see the status bar here. See kak.txt and then 1:1. That's telling me line 1, column 1. So let's start with the basics. Navigation. And here's where it gets confusing because, you know, some of the really basic stuff it's just the Vim commands. So navigation is HJKL. So if I go J for down, K for up, L goes right, and then H goes left. So it's the standard HJKL motion keys. And if I want to get into insert mode right now, I just type I, and from here I could type, this is a line of text. And if I hit escape, I'm back into normal mode. Now where it gets really weird, you assume, well, it's so Vim-like all the other Vim commands. Like if I hit DD to delete this line, because I really didn't need this line. DD does not actually do what you think it does. What the hell did it just do? It didn't delete the line I was on, but it brought the line that was up underneath up, and it deleted the first character. Let me U to undo. U to undo again. All right, so let's first of all explain D. D is for delete, but the object and verb situation is not the same. So in Vim, typically, to delete a word, you do DW, delete word. And because, especially those of us that speak English, that makes sense. Delete word. Or YW, yank word. Or CW, change word. All of that's going to be completely different in Kakoune because they reverse the order. The action is always the last thing you enter. So to delete a word, you would do W to select the word, then the action on it, D to delete it. I hope that makes sense. So everything's kind of backwards. And if you're used to the way it works in something like Vim, it's very strange. So to delete this line, actually, I would have to select the whole line. If I just type X on the keyboard, it selects the line, and then D deletes the line. Also, a very strange thing is to undo. Of course, U to undo, but redo in Vim is Control R. That does nothing here. To actually redo something, just capital U. So U to undo, capital U to redo, which I actually think that's pretty nice key binding. I like that better actually than doing U to undo and then Control R to redo. That's a little weird. I like U and capital U. That makes a lot more sense to me. So other than navigating with HJKL, you know, the Vim navigation keys, you could also do GG, just like in Vim, to go to the first line of the document, but capital G does not take you to the last line. So again, it's sort of Vim-like, but not really. GG does go to the first line, but to go to the last line, you need to do GE for go to the end. GG, GE, you see, first, last. If you want to go to a specific line, say to line 5, you could do 5G, and it'll take you to line 5. Now say I'm on line 5, and I want to travel to another line, but I want to select everything on my way to that new line. Say, right now I'm on line 5. I'm going to go to line 10, but instead of 10G, I'm going to do 10 capital G. And you see, I go to the 10th line, my cursor moves to the 10th line, but I've selected everything on my way there. So if I hit D, you know, I could delete all that. U to undo. Or since I still have it selected, I could Y to yank it, just like in Vim. P to paste it, just like in Vim. So I could, you know, P a few times, or U to undo all of that. GG to get back to the top of the document here. And one of the things with Kakoune, it's modal, but there's no visual mode really. It's just normal and in insert mode. You know, in Vim you've got all these various visual modes that you use to select blocks of text. You don't really do that with Kakoune. In normal mode you select blocks of text, and how you do that is, right now I'm on the first line, first character. If I type Alt-I, I get this menu. Let me move my head here. And basically it says I'm selecting inner surrounding objects. That's what Alt-I does. And then the next keystroke basically selects what I'm trying to select. Am I trying to select everything within parentheses, braces, brackets, angle blocks, double quotes, etc.? Or I could type P for the paragraph. Let me see if P works here. And it selects what it thinks is the entire paragraph here. And then here I could D to delete, or Y to yank, or I could do C to change. What that does, it deletes it, but it puts me into insert mode. So I could type some new text. One interesting thing here is you guys see the hinting here where it gives you, that is interesting. So one of the neat things, like if I started typing the path to my home directory, it'll kind of give me some suggestions there on what I'm looking for. That's actually kind of neat. It's one of the neat things about Kakoune is the suggestions and also the Clippy. Now, when you first see it, you're thinking, well, that's ridiculous. Why do you need Clippy in your terminal code editor? But like if I want to select something again, some blocks of text, let me Alt-I again. I mean, this is really useful. You know what it kind of reminds me of a little bit? It kind of reminds me of in Emacs, especially Doom Emacs. You guys remember the which key function where you start typing, it'll tell you the key, what the key does, what the command does. And you've got that kind of in Kakoune. It's almost similar in that aspect, but it's built into Kakoune. It's not a plugin. To search for something in Kakoune, it's very Vim-like. You just do a slash on the keyboard and you see, what do we want to search for? And I want to search for the word Kakoune, which is the last thing I'd search for actually playing around with this document. It remembered that. Anyway, I'm going to search for Kakoune. If I hit enter, it takes us to the first instance of that word. If I type in on the keyboard, N for next, we will keep traveling to each instance of Kakoune in this document. If you want a reverse direction, Alt-N. Takes us back through the instances of Kakoune in reverse order, and it actually cycles eventually back to the bottom of the document. Now let's focus a little more on selecting text, because that's probably the biggest change from something like Vim or Emacs, is how you select various blocks of text, whether it be a word, a line, a paragraph, the entire document. For example, right now my cursor is on the I in the word introduction. Now if I type the closing bracket, that character right there, it says select to surrounding object end. So it's basically saying I'm about to select some text from my cursor all the way to the end of an object. But what object? If I type W for word, it'll select all the text to the end of the word. Now let me get out of that. I'm going to go back to the I, and once again I'm going to do the closing bracket to get into select the surrounding object. This time I'm going to do P for paragraph, and it selects all of the text from I, where my cursor was, to the end of the paragraph. Now I've got my cursor on the I in introduction again. Now what if I wanted to select everything going the other way? Well, instead of the closing bracket, what you would do is the opening bracket. And now, for example, if I selected P for paragraph, it's going to select everything from my cursor going forward to the beginning of the paragraph. Does that make sense? And there I could D to delete. Let me U to undo that. One interesting thing you can do is you can take the output of a shell command and of course have it placed in your Kakoune document, but that's normal in Vim and Emacs as well. How you do this in Kakoune is a little different though. You type the pipe symbol. And now that I've typed the pipe symbol, if I did a shell command, how about pwd, print working directory, we get the output on the line that I was on. You see /home/dt, that's my home directory. Now let me do a xd to delete line. Let me do the pipe symbol, and how about the date command? And you see the date is inserted here into the document. Let me U to undo a couple of times to get back to the default document. One thing I don't quite like about the pipe symbol is it inserts it exactly where your cursor is, and let me show you that one more time. Let's pipe date. It puts it right there. Sometimes you want that stuff to be on the next line. So if I XD to get back here, instead of doing the pipe symbol, what you can do is exclamation. And then this time, if I run the date command, watch what happens. The blank line that was there is still there. Let me show you this on a line that actually had some text. So exclamation, PWD, it does a line break after the output is basically what it's doing. Doing search and replace is different in Kakoune. It really doesn't have like your global search and replace that you're used to in Vim. What you would do is, if you want to search for every instance of something in the document, again, it's all about selecting blocks of text. You need to select the entire document first. So the % symbol selects the entire document, and then if I type S on the keyboard, it says asking what are we selecting here, and I'm going to select, I'm going to select every instance of the word the, lowercase. Well, that's actually not every instance of just the word the, because I didn't add a space behind it, so things like they and there and things like that would also be tripped up in this, but I'm going to hit enter. And now it's selected every instance of THE. From here, we could perform an action. For example, if I typed D, it will delete every instance of THE that it has highlighted right now. And from there, you see I'm left with just the empty space. The cursors are still there. Matter of fact, I can move these cursors around. You see all these multiple cursors I now have? That's kind of cool, right? Now let me undo all of that because this document will be unreadable if I actually make that change. Remember, it's not DW. It's WD to delete word, or X to select a line, XD. Or if you wanted to copy a line, XY. And of course, paste is still just P. So I could P a million times if I wanted to copy a line. Also, if I wanted to delete multiple lines, it would be something like 5XD. That didn't work because we have to shift. So let me go back up and I'm going to do 5 Shift X because we want to select everything. D. So it's the little things. It's the little differences that if nobody shows you, it's going to be incredibly frustrating for you. Because you're going to be trying to do everything the way you learned in, Vim and Emacs, these other text editors, and you're going to get incredibly frustrated because it's doing things and it doesn't make sense why it's doing those things because everything's kind of backwards. And it kind of makes sense why the Kakoune guys reverse the order of object verb. They always want the action to be last, is because what if you get a command wrong? For example, if I want to delete 5 words in Vim, I would do 5DW, 5 delete word. But maybe I didn't want that 5th word deleted. I realized I miscounted. I only wanted 4 words deleted. Well, now I have to undo and then 4DW. Well, you're not ever going to make that mistake in Kakoune because you always do the selection first, right? You do 5W and then you get the block of text, 5 words selected, and visually you immediately see, too many words, right? So you never accidentally mess up, because it's always, the action is always the last thing you do, and it's always selecting your various blocks of text. It's the first command you do. We should also talk about some of the syntax highlighting, since I actually didn't show you, a proper document in a programming language. Let's open up Haskell, because text editors, some of Vim, Emacs, sometimes don't have the best Haskell support out of the box. You have to do all these plugins to get the syntax highlighting and everything. Haskell looks great in Kakoune. Looks fantastic. I love it. Now let me quit. And if I wanted to check out shell scripting, it's one of the most common things you'll probably do in your terminal-based text editor is do some shell scripting. How does bash look? Looks great. Right? This is really good. I've done nothing with the syntax highlighting, no customization or anything. That's just the way it looks by default, at least with my color scheme here. And let's see how some Python looks. Yeah, the syntax highlighting and everything for Python looks pretty good. Now, one thing that I didn't mention with Kakoune is there's no such thing as a tab or a split with Kakoune. You don't get them. You're not doing any horizontal splits or vertical splits the way you can in Vim and Emacs. They don't exist. Kakoune, if you read their documentation, they use the Unix philosophy, that particular phrase, many times. They always talk about doing things the Unix way, and it's basically do one thing well, and let other programs handle the stuff that you really shouldn't be doing on your own. So if you want splits and tabs and things like that, pretty much everybody that uses Kakoune, as far as when I was researching it a little bit on the internet, everybody uses tmux with it. That's how you're going to get splits if you want to split. But honestly, you could if you're using a tiling window manager like I am, you just open up another instance of Kakoune. And it's fine opening up multiple windows of Kakoune because all your buffers between the various windows are actually shared. So it's not like, it's really is fine. You don't have to have the splits and the tabs and all that, but if you want them, install tmux. Now, I think the next question many of you guys are going to have is, hey, DT, are you going to switch to Kakoune? Well, I don't know. I mean, I've got Vim and Emacs on the system. I play with both. I don't know why I couldn't throw another text editor in the mix, because honestly, I don't think it really hurts to try stuff out. Like a lot of you guys, when I switched from Vim to Emacs, were worried, well, you're going to forget everything you knew about Vim. No. Right? I didn't forget everything I knew about. I mean, I used Emacs exclusively for like 3 months, but I could get back into Vim, no problem, just like that. And the same thing, even though I haven't really been back in Emacs in a while, because I've been back in Vim, I could go back to Emacs, no problem. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn these things, you kind of know it, and I could learn Kakoune. And if I learned Kakoune, I wouldn't forget how to use Vim and Emacs. I could use all three. Does it offer a real advantage over something like Vim or Emacs? Probably to most people, no. Honestly, if you're a serious programmer or developer, and I know Kakoune is really marketing itself as this more efficient editor for programmers, the problem is most serious programmers need a more proper IDE, a development environment, and many of those guys are going to look to something like Emacs, especially with all the plugins and everything, all the extra functionality that you get with something like Emacs that you're just not going to get with Kakoune, because Kakoune has a plugin system very similar to Vim, but because there's so few Kakoune users, there's very few people actually creating plugins for it. There's a few out there. I found some plugins for it. There's a Fuzzy Finder plugin I came across the other day. I didn't actually install it. I should have to try it out, but I really wanted to keep this as default as possible for the most part. But you're not going to find everything. It's nowhere near as extensible as Vim and Emacs. It just isn't, because there's just not enough plugins. Also, you're probably limited in how much you can extend it as far as plugins. The fact that it doesn't have things like splits, for example. How could you have a nerd tree in Kakoune if you didn't have a split? I mean, is Tmux going to handle the nerd tree? I mean, that's kind of the way you're limited. There may be nerd tree plugins for Kakoune. I don't know. I actually haven't looked that deeply into it. But one of the things I often do, especially when I'm learning something new, I try to stick with defaults. I don't try to extend it or add a bunch of plugins and extensions and things like that with anything, whether it be a text editor or web browser or whatever it happens to be. And I will say Kakoune, out of the box, playing with it for a few days, is usable. Maybe more so out of the box usable than even Vim out of the box, because Vim, you have to do some stuff right away to that Vim RC. At least add a few lines to your Vim RC to kind of make Vim usable. For example, many times in Vim, unless you configure it a little bit, your mouse doesn't actually work in Vim. The mouse works just fine in Kakoune. I can select blocks of text. I'm in Alacrity, by the way, since it is a terminal-based text editor. I should mention that everything I did today was in the Alacrity terminal, so I can't swear that this would work in every terminal emulator out there, but at least in Alacrity, mouse functionality is just fine. All in all, though, I'm impressed with this text editor. I really am. I can see why a lot of you guys have been interested in it, because it does make the promise of being faster, more efficient. The fact that they reverse object and verb makes it really interesting. I could see how that would save you some time, make you more efficient, less mistake prone. And I hope that now at least that somebody has put out something on video showing you at least some of the basics on how to get started with Kakoune. More you guys will try it, so hopefully my inbox will quit being flooded by people that want to learn Kakoune but can't really work it out themselves. Hey, DT, will you learn it for us? There you go. Even if I never make another video about Kakoune, and I probably will, and I'll use it, but even if I don't, I think I gave a lot of you guys enough of a head start. You can work out the rest on your own. Now, before I go, I need to thank a few special people. I need to thank the producers of the show: Michael, Mitchell, Gabe, Haplo, Nate, Arch5530, Chris, Chuck, DJ, Donnie, Dylan, George, LibreQuest, Omri, Paul, Rob, Sean, and Willie. These guys, they are the producers of this episode. They are my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without these guys, I couldn't have spent all this time trying to learn the Kakoune text editor. I couldn't have done it. The show is also brought to you by each and every one of these ladies and gentlemen, all these names you're seeing on the screen. This is all my supporters over on Patreon, because this channel is sponsored by you guys, the community. If you'd like to support my work, please consider doing so. Look for DistroTube over on Patreon. All right, guys. Peace.